Hi everyone, I am your host, Jade Haggard, podcasting from Art Universe Laboratory. Welcome to Artist Solace. Hello again and thank you for listening. This is episode 17 of Artist Solace. Today in the laboratory, I interview a lady by the name of Jen Edds. She currently lives in Indianapolis, Indiana, but is from Vincennes, Indiana. That was a nice surprise learning that fact about her because that's where I'm from. She's inspiring to me because she is so professional and developed. She inspires me to maintain my podcast. After asking for podcast recommendations via Facebook back in February, Jen's name was tagged to my post. I then began asking her for advice, and she was immediately responsive and helpful, which was really impressive to me. So it made sense for me to invite her to be a guest on the podcast, which she helped me get going. Her collection of videos and tutorials for podcast beginners served as an incredibly useful platform for my podcast launch. We get a great overview of what her journey has been like from Vincennes to Indianapolis. She's involved with some really interesting projects right now. She's even taking jiu-jitsu courses. She has some great opportunities coming up related to her podcasting, and I think she could offer you some really great services if you're interested, especially if you're interested in getting into podcasting. I'd really listen to this episode because she has some great insight. I hope you enjoy the interview and are able to extract some inspiration and insight from Jen. Enjoy. Jen?
Yes.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for the invite.
How are you today?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So today we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about your life as a podcaster and musician. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much all I know about you so far.
Okay.
I'm sure you have a lot of layers and experience. So I first heard about you when I was getting my podcast started. This was maybe back in January or February. Uh-huh. And I asked on Facebook if anybody had any recommendations for podcasting and how to get started. Someone tagged your name to mine. And you were immediately helpful and responsive. And so that was really great. And I looked up like videos and tutorials of your podcast beginners like online. And that really helped me like get this started. So,
good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear it's actually useful content.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so in my introduction I said it makes sense that I would have her on because you kind of helped me get this started. What are you doing right now?
I'm doing a lot of podcast editing and consulting. So I initially started out on the editing end of it, and then that really has turned into more of the consulting piece to I work a lot with business owners and industry experts that want to do a podcast. They have no idea where to start. And even though they want a podcast because they see the value in it, they don't necessarily want to be podcasters and have to learn like all of the things, which, as you know, can be very time consuming. And like it's great, it's fun and it's exciting, but it's my jam. It's not everybody else's. Yeah. Like they already have a job or a company. So I help them a lot with kind of figuring out where in the ecosystem of content that they're maybe already creating. So if they're doing webinars, if they're doing videos, can we repurpose that into the podcast? Can we turn it into a blog post? Can we basically use it to reach their audience however it is they prefer to consume their content? Because, some people like to watch 20-minute videos on YouTube. I don't, but I will listen to a podcast for 20 minutes when I'm in my car, and some people prefer to read. So I think when you can give people in your audience access to that content in the way that they prefer to consume it, like you're doing them a huge favor and yourself.
Yeah. It's easier for people to listen to, like buying the podcast for beginners or for dummies, like that seems daunting,
Yeah. And then so in addition to like what is your purpose? What is your Because a lot of people start and they're like, oh, I want to do a podcast because everybody's doing podcast. Like, tell me your favorite podcast. Well, I don't listen to podcast. I'm like, so you would write a book, but you've never read a book? Like, I love that people see the value in it, but like, there's gotta be a love for it, I feel like. And you've got to be really clear on what your mission and your purpose is and why you want to do it, or you're going to get 6 episodes in and then like you ghost your audience and you're done.
Yeah.
And
good point.
if you're intentionally like, I'm going to do a 6-episode podcast series because there's something very specific that I want to help my audience with and share this on my website and let people subscribe to it, then that's great. Because then people know up front, hey, it's 6 episodes and like this is it, and maybe she'll do one again down the road. But for right now, like this is it. And that's great. That's totally fine. But
At least they have like an aim. You
exactly.
have something specific.
Yeah, it's not like I'm going to try this and then if I don't get 5 million downloads and immediately get a sponsor, then it's a failure and I quit. It's like to really grow that audience and that engagement, it's a long game.
Yeah.
And you've got to be committed.
Yeah.
And just getting
my
people
bar
to
was like,
understand
if
that.
I could just get like 10 downloads per episode, I'm fine. Like, I don't even really care about the downloads right now. It's something for me. Like, I need inspiration, and I want to extract inspiration from my guests and hopefully shine a little bit of light into the art community, you know? Like,
right.
So
like, it's a
good
good,
point.
solid creative outlet. And because you're an artist and because I'm a musician, we are going to create, whether it's just for our own sheer joy, because we've got to create. And if people dig it, then that's cool. But if nobody listens, then, I mean, that's cool too. I've written lots of songs that no one's ever heard. And it's okay.
Yeah. When did you first start? Well, I guess my first question should be, where are you from?
Vincennes.
Really?
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. I kind of thought I knew that. Yeah.
Weird. You know, I did see we had some, like, mutual friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
But sometimes that happens and people are like, oh, I don't know. I just meet people.
Yeah. No, I grew up there. Born and raised.
Really?
Yeah.
When? Like, I know. I don't want to be rude and ask your age.
So
Oh,
I
wait.
graduated in 1990 from Lincoln.
Okay. So I graduated 2005. Okay. Really?
Yeah.
That's funny. Mm-hmm. How long have you lived up here then?
I moved up here after college, so probably 96, probably like 1996.
That's really bizarre.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, she's actually from Vincennes.
Yeah.
It's a small town, man.
Yeah.
It was probably smaller back then.
Yeah, probably so. But it was such a great place to grow up. I loved it.
You know what? Did you ever like go roading out on the country roads? That was probably the best time, I think, man.
It was so
The
good.
country roads, and just that's what people do on the weekends. They go riding around.
Oh, yeah.
Like-
my friend Tracy would come pick me up. She was a couple of years older than me. And we'd just go out driving around and like listening to Hank Jr. and
Yeah. That's funny.
yeah.
Cool, man. Do you ever go back? Do you have family
It's
out there?
been a while because my parents moved up here because my sister's also up here, so they're all in Noblesville. So I get back periodically. It's been a while, but I'll probably go back for whatever my next big
I wish my
class
parents would move
reunion
up
is.
here too. Mom and Dad. See
Move on
parents
up
move
here.
up here, please. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my parents still live down there. I have aunts and uncles down there too. So I usually have to go like once a month, maybe
Yeah.
once every 2 or 3 months. Like we have 2 kids now, so it's just
Yeah.
a little more time consuming and exhausting to get down there. But
I'd make that drive for some Bob's Pizza.
that's my dad's favorite. Every like Father's Day, I get him the Bob's Pizza gift card. That's so funny.
Perfect.
Like the Bob's on Main Street where they just stack it on, or the Bob's on 6th Street.
I'll go to either one. I just need some Bob's and then some Licks ice cream for dessert, and I'm good to go.
Wow. Okay. So, oh yeah, Licks. I can't believe they're still open. That's an old ice cream store.
Yeah, it is.
I used to go. My grandma used to take me there, and I would just get the same like orange sherbet ice cream. But ever since then, I haven't gone there. But it's changed a lot. I mean, if you haven't been down in a while, like there's so much new stuff like stores and hotels and they have a Steak and Shake.
Oh, wow. That is big time.
It was moving up
Yeah.
whenever they got a Steak and Shake.
Right.
But there's a lot of neat new stuff down there.
Yeah. I always loved the history of it. And I always
Yeah.
thought it was a great place to grow up. And then I went to VU for 2 years.
What did you major in?
I got my paralegal degree.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That I never used, but...
Why were you interested in that? And what exactly is a paralegal?
So I thought I might want to go to law school.
Okay.
So the paralegals, legal assistants, assist the attorneys. And I loved the research piece of it. Like I could go and just lock myself away and look up case law and study and do all the research, and I love that. And then I was hanging out with musicians.
Who were you hanging out with?
Like a guy that I randomly met at a party one night.
Do you know any? My cousin Matt Haggard is a musician. I have another second cousin named. I don't even know his name. But he plays with the Mud Ugly Gypsies now. He's had a shaved head and he used to have a long beard. Man, I can't think. Mark Carey.
I know that name. I don't think we hung out though.
Anyway.
But yeah.
So you had music part of your life when you were young.
Yeah, and
you were hanging out with musicians while going to VU?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were
so
they
some
from
guys,
Vincennes?
No, not
Okay.
Well, they weren't, but then also out at Fox Ridge Country Club, which I think is no more.
Yeah, it's just like a trail now.
Yeah. On Monday nights, they would have Pickin' and Grinnin' night.
They had that back then?
Yeah.
They still have that, I believe.
They do?
I worked at DNS Ambulance Service in 2010, and the owner, Donnie Holter,
Yeah.
he took me there. They had that.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I wonder if it's the same guys.
So my dentist, Doc Stedman, who played everything, was super bluegrass guy.
Yeah.
He got me going out there. And so I'd go and sit around with all those guys, and they were playing old school classic country, and Doc Stedman was like, well, you just need to get a Martin and listen to this Emmylou Harris record and you'll be set. And it's probably some of the best advice I ever got, because I did finally get a Martin guitar and just played the hell out of that Emmylou
Is that
Harris
the best
roses.
kind of guitar? Or a beginner guitar? Where does it stand on the
For
hierarchy?
bluegrass, it is kind of the top.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's other stuff out there, but you get a good Martin, you're
that in
golden.
mind.
Yeah.
I'm just borrowing this guitar for right now.
Yeah.
I need to settle down and actually get one.
Yeah, I love them. I've got a couple of them now, and they...
Acoustic?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I would hang out there, and I wasn't ever really into country music until starting to spend more time there.
Okay.
And that just hugely
So this is
impacted
early
me.
90s then?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
probably 92,
He was still playing
93.
there
Yeah.
10 years ago. That is so weird.
Yeah. It was great. It was really impactful. Because they were so encouraging. And I wasn't really singing at that point, even though they would, encourage me to do it. I was like, no, I'm just going to sit here and play and learn and watch all the stuff. But I think because of that influence, then later I picked up mandolin. I tried to play banjo, even though I never got the hang of that. And just it really opened me up to trying all of these other different instruments, because I could see kind of where everything fit in. And what was so impressive about Doc Stedman was he could play his guitar, he could play his banjo, he could play he could do all the things. It didn't matter what the song was. And, the guitar players were a dime a dozen. So he always had something cool to do. Yeah. So that definitely was impactful.
Did this influence you while you were in school? Did it playing the music actually help you do better while you were going to VU, or what was that like?
It was an outlet. It was a total creative, just fun outlet for me. But then when I went to Indiana State, I got a bachelor's degree from there, music with a concentration in business administration. Terre Haute.
Terre Haute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I did end up shifting into the music program. They didn't have guitar as a primary.
Sorry, say what you majored in.
Music with a concentration in business administration.
Music with a wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Music with a concentration in business administration. So
Yeah.
the business administration was related to the music.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I would take, some core music classes. I knew I didn't have the chops to be a performance major, but the business piece I could do. And that was like solid because you can always, do stuff with the business degree, right? So it was kind of a safe way to, if the music thing doesn't work out, then there's something to fall back on, right? Which made my parents much happier than me just saying, I'm going to go major in music and I don't know what I'm going to do with the degree.
That is a smart decision.
It worked out well.
10 years ago, I should have just gotten my nursing degree then and psychology and everything. I would just, because I was like, I can make it full time. I'm good enough as an artist. Like, no.
It's hard.
15 years later, like I'm still not supporting myself full time. So
yeah, it's hard.
Yes.
And when you can find a way to kind of marry those things.
That's the trick.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah. Which I've been able to do that now, but it was a very circuitous path to get to that point.
Okay. So how much time did you spend in Terre Haute then? Did you stay there after you graduated?
No, I came home for a little while, back to Vincennes, and kind of started applying for jobs in Indianapolis because I knew all my friends moved to Indy after college. So I'm like, that's where I'm going to be. Mm-hmm. And then finally got a job up here and made the move, and I've been here ever since then.
So when did you move here?
Like 96, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it feels like forever.
30 years then-ish?
Yeah, it's probably getting close. Thereabouts. Yeah.
33.
Don't make me do math.
Sorry. Only 20.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's a really long time.
Cool. So what did you do when you first got here?
I worked for, the company at the time was called Ogden, and then they were later bought out by Aramark. So they did all the food and beverage at the Murat Theater and Victory Field and Market Square Arena and Deer Creek. And so I had the business degree and got a job. Like, it was my last interview before I ran out of money to have to go home. So I got offered a job and then started working in all of the venues, which was pretty cool. It's hard work, but...
Were you selling the products or did you manage them?
I helped manage all of the food and beverage.
Okay.
So, like, all of the concession stands, and then sometimes, like at Market Square Arena, Rock Show comes in, and then there's all the merch. So we worked with them on selling the merch and setting all that stuff up, too. So
yeah. Now, so I guess I want to know when you started getting into podcasting. So where'd you go from there? So
from there, I did various inside and outside sales jobs.
Were you still playing music?
Yeah. So while I was working at Market Square Arena, I met my friend Samantha, we have an acoustic duo called Crackhead Patty. And we do a lot of like 70s and 80s covers, just like all this fun stuff that we grew up on. And we were at a John Prine and Nancy Griffith show at Butler. We were like, we should start a band. So we did.
It's one of those absurd ideas that actually worked. Huh?
It did, because 20 years later, like, we haven't been playing out much, but we still do gigs. We very rarely rehearse. Like, we very rarely learn a new song, but we've got our set down.
That's good.
It's mostly we just play together so we can hang out and catch up. Like, it's an excuse to get us together.
Yeah, you need that when you're an adult. It's like, you can't just hang out anymore. Like, there's no fun. Like, you have to have a purpose. Like, let's come over and record a podcast.
Exactly.
So come on, man. I'm a mom. I gotta multitask here.
Right. So we still have this band 20 years later, and it's great.
What's her name again?
Her name's Samantha Cross.
Is she from Indy?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you meet her again? No.
We worked together at Market Square.
Arena.
So
Okay.
she worked in marketing for the Pacers.
Okay.
Yeah, and we just became friends.
Right on.
And we're like, yeah, we should totally start a band. So we had a friend that was playing regularly at this bar downtown called Utopia. So she had us come up because we knew like 2 or 3 songs. So we sing 2 or 3 songs, and we do well enough that the manager's like, hey, I want to book you guys for like a 3-hour gig. And we're like, great, we'll do it. Then we're like, oh God, we got to learn a lot of songs.
3 songs is like 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah. So she's very good at ad-libbing, and she's super funny.
I see.
So there was some music, but there was a lot of Samantha just entertaining and being Samantha in those very early gigs when we started out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you're not as... Are you as outgoing then? Or like,
No.
are you introverted?
Yeah. I've done a very good job of picking singers that are super extroverted and great with the crowd. So my first gig, I swear I had my head down the entire time over my guitar, and my leg was wrapped around the bar stool to keep it from shaking. I was that nervous. And
That was the first time you got on stage?
it was the first time like up here,
Okay.
you know, like for an actual gig that
Yeah.
people were like coming to see us for 3 hours. Like people planned an evening to come watch us. And I was like, God, I don't want to suck.
Did you ever do any open mics before then?
I did some open mics, and like I'd done the Fox Ridge thing, and I mean I've been playing in bands since junior high when we played the Clark
really
Middle
nervous.
School fashion show.
Oh, man. Clark Middle School, dude.
Yeah, it was pretty
I don't
fabulous.
remember them having any fashion shows when
Yeah.
I was there. But I was there like in the late 90s.
Yeah, it wasn't as cool as when I was there.
Probably not. So that for time you got on with the crackhead patties,
Yeah.
you were really, really nervous?
Oh God, it was
Like
horrible.
leg shaking?
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
how was your heart rate?
through the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was really, it was great. Like it was great to be up there doing what I do, but it was just, I still get really nervous. before
Really?
Gigs. Oh yeah, I don't think that'll ever go away.
Yeah. What about whenever you're recording? Do you get nervous before you record a podcast?
It depends. Normally not, but sometimes, like if I'm not super present and focused, it is just crazy madness, and then I have to do more editing on the back end.
I see.
Like last time, so I do a jujitsu podcast with my coach.
You do jujitsu?
Yeah,
For real?
yeah, and I'm horrible. I'm so bad. So I kind of started this podcast series because I was so bad at it, and I called it my Awkward Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Journal.
Oh, I saw that today. I was doing
Yeah.
a little research on you, and I saw that that video box.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Like I think it was on the website. On
And
your website.
they were just like these short little 2 to 3 minutes. Like sometimes I'd record them in my car. Sometimes I would actually, because what I found was happening is I was learning things on the mat. And even though I totally sucked at it, but they were things that would apply to my life off the mat, like in real life.
Okay.
These lessons that I was picking up. I was like, I should probably do something with this, even though I suck at it. So that kind of turned into starting this podcast with my coach, AJ Klingerman. She's a purple belt. She's a phenomenal instructor. And she was like, let's do this. So I'm like, okay. So we typically record like on Tuesdays after class. But for me, whatever reason, last time I had such a hard shift from going straight from the mat to like shifting into podcast focus and being aware of everything that's going on and all of this
sharp
stuff.
and present, maybe.
Yeah, well, because we actually recorded in the gym after our class because we had a guest who was one of my teammates who had this goal of getting 150 rolls in for the month of July. Like it started with 100, and she's like, I'm going to
What a rolls.
So that's like after class where you go for maybe 3 or 5 minutes and kind of it's the sparring.
Okay.
So the opportunity
Okay,
to
like rolling on the mat?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. And we're like, we want to have you on the podcast to talk about this because you're going to hit this goal and this is really incredible. So we just did it after class. So I took all my mics and everything and set them all up on the mat. And like we're sitting there in the gym and we're talking. But I was so like still kind of in jujitsu brain, which I get turned around. Like I don't know my left hand from my right and stuff gets confusing. And that just carried into the podcast and it was more editing, but it turned out great.
Like were you like fumbling over your words?
Yeah. Like I could hardly put a sentence together.
It's probably something to that. Your brain was probably still like whatever part of the brain is activated during jujitsu was probably still lit up and excited and you can't verbalize anything.
Yeah, it's just hard to make that transition.
So you had to edit more.
Yeah.
So how long was that podcast then? How long did you record?
It was probably 25 minutes. Like our podcasts are pretty quick. And we were really intentional about that because we batch record. So we'll do 5 or 6 episodes and just knock them out and then release them every other week.
Nice. I've heard of that technique before.
It works for us just because of our schedules.
Yeah. And
we know that we're always together on Tuesday for class and then she comes over to my house after class and the mics are set up and we have a pretty good idea of kind of what we want to talk about. And yeah, the episodes have been working out to be 15, 20 minutes or so.
That's not bad.
It's great because if somebody wants to listen to it, like on their way to class, it's a great thing to listen to.
Yeah. So so how long does that take you? I mean, do you separate the episodes then, or do you just record one long conversation?
Separate them.
You separate them?
Yeah, because I know that I'm going to go back in and then add like the intro music and clean everything up. And it's been easier to have them as separate files and separate projects to work on. But we do have one. So my coach AJ hosts this women's only grappling camp and that took place back in May. And we had 2 black belts in that were instructors. And on the last afternoon, we did a Q&A with them. And we're like, we're going to record this Q&A because not everybody could stay because they had to drive back to all over the country from where they came from. And so we're like, we're going to record this and then release it out as podcast episodes. So we just kind of break down that whole entire Q&A session to maybe 1 or 2 questions that kind of go together. And then that's what's coming out for the next 3 to 4 weeks of the podcast, which is kind of fun.
That's interesting. That's interesting because that's something, because I have other things I'm interested in talking about with people.
Yeah.
But like my episodes are primarily based on people coming over.
Yeah.
And talking. But like shorter episodes on a topic that I'm interested in is something I'm currently talking to somebody else about, like having an episode where we talk about like Jordan Peterson for an hour and his impact on us. So that I have to listen to some of your stuff.
Yeah.
On that. And if those are like short, then it's not so daunting. Like I have to spend an hour. Like, oh my gosh! And you have to work with other people's schedules too.
Totally.
The funny thing is, it seems like most creative people are usually like available during the week at 1 p.m.
Yeah.
There's a couple people who have like full-time jobs, so I have to wait for them to get off work. But
yeah,
that's interesting. When did you get into jiu-jitsu?
Back in November.
Okay, so this is recent.
Yeah, this is super recent.
Do you listen to like Joe Rogan?
No, because his podcasts are like 3 hours long or something crazy. I'm like,
I take me like a week to listen to one.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think my attention span is that long. Right. It's got to be really, really good.
Yeah.
To keep me that engaged for that long.
Right. But he does jiu-jitsu. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, and I've wanted to go back and listen to his stuff specifically because of that. And one of the things when we started this podcast, because most of the podcasts out there about jiu-jitsu are done by dudes, and they're like at least an hour long.
I see.
And we're like, we want a very specific topic to address specific questions, especially that come up as women. Training in a primarily, male-dominated sport.
I see.
And so we were super intentional about keeping it relatively short and making sure that it's not just this hour-long kind of rambling discussion of jiu-jitsu, because I don't know enough to talk about it for an hour. I mean, and it's great because I bring that inexperience and that curiosity and like, tell me more. And, you know, she's a purple belt. She's been training for a while. So she brings that, you know, that instructor's and experienced mindset to it. So it's a nice mix. Yeah, it's a good dynamic. So even, you know, because I tried listening to some jiu-jitsu podcast and I was like, I don't even know what they're talking about because I haven't done it enough to know.
Right.
So we are very intentional about, even if you are a beginner, like you're going to understand what we're talking about.
That seems like what you do with your you know, podcast tutorials. You're really like sensitive to people who are beginning, and you're like, you can suck at it, do it badly, but just do it.
Well, and I think that the jiu-jitsu has been very good at keeping me in that mindset of it's okay to suck at it. Like, just keep showing up, because you will eventually you will get better. You will start to see little bits of improvement.
I love that phrase though. That's one of the phrases I've adopted. Like, you're gonna suck at it. Just keep. Actually, in episode 4, an interview with Missy Wallen. She's an actress. She's hilarious. Like, towards the end of the podcast, we were talking about like how you need to suck at first. Like, just keep sucking. Just suck at it. Do it badly.
Exactly.
Because people are just afraid, you know?
Yeah.
They're afraid to be, just to have some humility. Mm-hmm. You know, it's hard.
Yeah, it's super hard.
Well, when I did an open mic back in April, and I, like, practiced for a day. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm like, I'm going to go and do this, and I'm going to see how good I'm going to do. It was terrible. Uh-huh. I haven't done one since, and I haven't really practiced much, but, like, still, it's like, those things are good. They just let you know where you are, you know, and where you want to focus on, and if you want to give up, or, like, just have some humility. So, Jen says, keep sucking, man.
That's right.
Suck at it.
Well, one of the other things that I think has impacted how I present material, like in the tutorial videos, is, so I've volunteered with Girls Rock Indianapolis for 10 years.
Girls
which is
Rock.
rock and roll camp for girls and female identified and non-binary kids ages 9 to 16 is the age of our campers. They may or may not have ever picked up an instrument, but they are put in bands on day one. They are given instrument instruction every day. Mm-hmm. And in addition to some other workshops. So we do like logo design, we do fashion workshop, we did a self-defense workshop this year. And then with some of our older campers, we did a 3-hour garage band workshop to try to teach them how to start recording themselves and using some technology. But on Saturday, these campers get up with their bands and play this brand new song that they've written. And it's incredible. And when you are working with a 9-year-old that maybe doesn't even have the finger strength to hold strings down, like, you get really good at making modifications and presenting the material in a way that it's like you are just focused on the basics, the core basics, and then anything else you can add is gravy. But one thing that I've learned is that there's not a right way to do it. The way that gets the gold on, that's how you do it. If that's what works for you, then great. I mean, we've had campers that have like held guitars on their laps because they just didn't, like, that worked for them. So it's like, that works for you. And if you can only play in open strings, perfect. That'll match up with the bass nicely. And,
I see.
You know, and we will accommodate all of those skill levels and mesh them together to make something really cool.
Is this like a week-long
Yeah, it's
camp?
a week long.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's down at IUPUI.
Really? Mm-hmm. Like, where?
In the music technology building. So right on the corner of like Michigan and I forget what the cross street is there. Yeah.
So you do it inside the building? Like
inside the building. We take over the entire basement. So there are about 50 campers, and then we also have our kind of junior counselors that have been in the program for a while, which is great because then they get to take more of a leadership role. but then they're still getting some like special workshops, like the Garage Band workshop and things like that, that's more geared toward them. So they're working with the younger campers, and, you know, that's somebody for, I think, that the younger campers can relate to a little better than, you know, a bunch of grown-ups running around. So it's worked out really well.
Who started? Did you start that? Like, how did that
No,
get
so
started?
Sharon Rickson, who was in a band called Neon Love Life, and
I've heard of
they
them.
were amazing.
I used to, a comedian friend of mine was really good friends. What's
So
her name? What was her name?
Sharon Rickson and Ashley Plummer and Tasha was the drummer, and Lindsay, and yeah, they were just this phenomenal band.
I
And
can't remember who I knew.
Yeah, that's
she was
kinda how it
She used to
started.
be a bartender at the Brass Ring. This is like
that's Sharon Rickson.
Is that Sharon? Okay.
Yeah.
Is she still bartending there?
I forget
Or-
where
this
she
was
is
a while
now.
ago
Yeah,
when I met
yeah,
her.
yeah.
But yeah, so I've heard of them. So they got that. They
Yeah,
started
that's
that?
kind of, yeah. Ashley was like, hey, would you want to come teach guitar at rock camp? And I was like, yeah. Are you kidding?
Duh.
Yeah, and it was great. And yeah, I'm still there doing it. I didn't teach guitar. I haven't for the last couple years just because of work stuff. But I'm still like involved with the board, and then come in and we use an app on the iPad called Launchpad, which is a great way. We do it Monday afternoon to just kind of get the bands collaborating together and starting to work together to create music. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So now, when did you get involved with podcasting?
That didn't happen until about 2013.
Okay, that
So-
seems that's relatively recent. then,
Yeah,
so-
it really is. So I had a job working. I did inside sales in a cube farm under fluorescent lights. It was awesome. I mean, the company I worked for was great. I liked my coworkers. I loved my clients. But there was just something missing. And I was playing a lot of music then too. And like we were getting some great opening gigs, and I had some really cool opportunities. And I was like, there is more to this life than me sitting in this cube farm.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. And so finally I came back from vacation, and my wife also was like, figure out what you want to do, because I'm tired of you griping about it all the time and being
Right.
a cranky troll. So we get back from vacation, I turn on my monitor, and like, cause you come back from vacation, you're like, I'm refreshed, this is
Yeah.
going to be great. And I was just like, I can't do this.
So you're sitting at
another
work.
day.
Yes.
Like I'm sitting at work, and I'm just like, this is awful. So I called my wife, and I was like, can we go to lunch? Because she just worked around the corner. So we talked about it at lunch, and she's like, then quit. Like, you've got savings. Give him your 2 weeks and figure out what you want to be when you grow up. So I was like, okay, I will.
Good for her.
Yeah, she was super.
It really takes support
yeah,
from your significant other.
if I didn't
Man.
have that support, I'd probably still be sitting there, you know?
Or at least like divorced or something.
Right. Yeah, there definitely would have been some big change.
So props.
Yeah. And so I knew I wanted to do something music related. I didn't know exactly what that was going to be. I knew I needed to get some production skills. So I actually took some production courses through Berkeley Music Online, which was great because I learned how to use Logic for Mac, and just kind of the theory and process of how to put all of the things together. And then I have a friend that knew I'd gone out on my own. He was like, hey, I have these friends that are nuns that do a podcast, and for Christmas, I want to gift them custom theme music. Will you write it? And I was like, well, if you're going to write me a check, and I have this
yeah.
brand new business, like, I'll figure it out. I had no idea what that was going to sound like. I said yes. And then that project worked out really well. And then Sister Maxine was like, hey, since you know how to do all this audio stuff and it takes us forever to edit our own podcast, could we just pay you to do that? And at first I was like, well, there was some resistance to it, because I was like, well, that's not really what I thought I was going to do. But again, she was willing to write a check.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yes, I will do that. I'd never edited a podcast before. I just knew how to move the files around and make them sound pretty decent. And I hadn't even listened to that many podcasts up until that point. I mean, there were a few, but I wasn't a regular listener.
They're obviously, I don't think were as popular back then, but like, what were your ideas about podcasts back then? Like what?
So the only one that I listened to with any consistency was Otis Gibbs, Thanks for Giving a Damn, which is a phenomenal podcast.
Is that on iTunes?
Yeah.
Because I'm still not really sure how old podcasts are, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
his has been out for a while. And he talks to like musicians or people around the music industry, and because he's a musician that was played around Indianapolis. I think he's from Wanamaker, maybe, but lives down in Nashville now, and tours the world as a singer-songwriter, and he's amazing.
Otis Gibbs?
Yeah. Yeah, check him out.
Okay.
So I would listen to his because I loved the stories and the conversation. But that was really the only podcast I was listening to with any regularity at that time. And then this opportunity came and I said yes to it. And then I was like, oh, I love this. I love this podcasting thing. Like I just jumped in. I was like, I'm going to start my own podcast and learn how to do all the things. And
wow, man, what's that feeling? Like the feeling like, how do you describe the feeling? Did you notice any physiological differences, like maybe nervousness or...
No, but just
increased heart rate?
excitement.
Excitement.
A lot of just excitement around this idea. And especially because I saw what the sisters were doing with their podcast. Because they're amazing. I mean, they had this huge online ministry where... So they will go to... they call them Mother House road trips. So they will go to different cities and spend time with the sisters there and interview them. They will live stream it. They have people manning the chat room, and then they like send me the recording, and then I do the final edits on it and mix it and upload it and put it out. But they're having these amazing conversations with these women that have done this incredible work all around the world. I'm like, I want to have cool conversations like that.
Yeah.
I want to talk to people. I want to do this podcast thing. This is awesome. So I started the Brassy Broadcast. And initially it was around women working in the music industry, but more on the business side, because that's what interested me, not so much the performance side. And I got to have some great conversations and made some great connections. And now the podcast has kind of evolved over the last 3 or 4 years because I'm like, maybe I should actually do something related to my business to help me grow my business and talk about my business. But there's still definitely like a musical influence to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on, man. That is so funny to think like you got started out helping nuns. Like, who would have thought?
Exactly.
Everyone has such a unique story.
Well, and I think that's what's so cool about podcasting, because like you don't need an Oprah-sized audience to have an impact. You can have a super niched down podcast. And it kind of goes back to that idea of like those 1,000 true fans. Like if you can get 1,000 true fans, that's probably all you really need. And then if you can grow beyond that, fantastic. But you've got to be super specific in who you're talking to. Because I think a lot of it is like when you're writing a song, like you're not writing a song to everyone, or it sucks.
Yeah.
But when you are having that very specific conversation or idea or thought around who you are communicating with, that's where the magic happens.
That's some good advice.
Yeah.
You have to have that specific aim or goal, you know?
Right. Because, like, it doesn't matter that Bruce Springsteen can stand in a football stadium and sing to 60,000 people. Because initially he made that connection, like, with one song.
Yeah.
To somebody that listened. And then somebody showed up to that football stadium. And the masses came.
Yeah.
But it all started from that connection with one person.
Nice. I'm inspired.
Good.
That's cool. Because, like, I mean, my aim... Well, let me ask you. With your brassy broadcast, podcast is what it's called?
Yeah.
What's your goal with that? Who are you talking to specifically?
It has shifted.
Really?
Yeah. And so really the last couple years, it's kind of just been this podcast experimental playground for me. One of the things, because I like to try stuff out kind of before I recommend it to clients. So it's kind of that little experimentation lab. But it's also very geared to podcasters or people that have a message to deliver. So I've done a couple of podcast collaborative series that have been really fun for me. So I have a friend, Alex Rafato Perry, who works with, she does coaching like on executive presence and delivering your message. Like she just did a TEDx talk in Cincinnati. And so she can like help people put together a TEDx talk. And we did a 6-part series on how to deliver your dynamic message, because we knew that there was an overlap, like with her audience and my audience. So she talks to people that are maybe, executive level, that are presenting in meetings and to, corporate stuff. But then I'm still talking with people that are presenting, even though it's in the podcasting realm. So it was like, where's the overlap and what can we talk about and do a series about? Which was great, because then it got me introduced to her people and her to my people. And then we had this really cool collaborative series that we did. And it was really fun. Yeah. And I learned a lot from that. And then I did another one with Amy Woodall. And it was a lot about mindset and enlightenment. 'Cause she's really into, so she does like corporate sales training, but she also is very into like meditation and mindfulness. And so where does that fit into like corporate business life?
I see. That's the third time mindfulness has been brought up on my show.
Because it's huge. It's so important.
Is that the doctrine that Sam Harris advocates for? Or
I don't know. I'm not really familiar.
I don't know if
with
that's
Sam
like just
Harris.
something particular to him, but the two other gentlemen that mentioned his name, or like mentioned Sam Harris, mentioned mindfulness. So that's the third time I've heard it, so I'm going to have to look it up now.
Yeah.
You hear something like 2 or 3 times, you're like, okay, I'm going to check this thing out.
I've got a great podcast series you can listen to on it.
Yeah, all right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. You have a lot of stuff, though, it seems like.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff.
Well, I guess really, like, when I was getting started with my podcast, I looked up, of course, your videos online, and I'm not sure. Maybe I looked at your Facebook page and saw the Brassy Broadcast links. And then I think from there, I was like, oh, shit, this is perfect. Like, yes,
good.
Even, what was it, like intro music? How to make your intro music?
Oh,
I used
yeah.
that. You gave advice on where to record. That's why I have this awkward, ugly sheet.
It's perfect, though.
Like in this corner of the house.
We're going to sound great.
As opposed to being in my closet,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the best I have right now.
Yeah, and it's perfect. Like, that's what you do.
Right.
You don't make excuses. You go with what you have, and you make it the best it can possibly be.
Yeah.
And it's perfect.
It sounds all right.
Yeah.
Except for sometimes we'll hear cars or buses or airplanes
It's
outside.
ambiance. That's all it is. It's a little soundtrack.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what else. I was trying to reminisce. It's funny looking back on whenever you get these things started, you're like, man, of course it was back in March. It wasn't that long ago. But anyway, yeah. So any listeners out there who are interested in podcasting, look up Jen Eads and look up brassybroadcast.com. It's really helpful. She has tutorials and videos online, just simple stuff. Even how to get rid of how do you describe it? How to get rid of the fuzzies and
like the background noise and some of the hiss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just messing with noise gate. and stuff like that. I mean, that was enough. That was enough to help me get launched. I kind of figured everything else out on my own.
Yeah.
But it's been awesome, man. I think there are a lot of people who are interested in it. And, like, everyone could have something different to talk about. Everyone has something unique to them.
I think that's what's so fun about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's how I try to encourage people. And I say, you know, like, just have something, have an aim.
Right.
Because there are those people that say, I just want to record in my basement and just shoot the shit for an hour. Like,
yeah.
Sure, but
right.
Try to have something a little specific.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Unless you're Terry Gross and this is NPR and you're shooting the shit with somebody really fascinating.
Yeah.
Probably nobody's going to be too into it.
So with your podcast, though, you said you're still not... You don't necessarily have a specific aim. You've just been kind of experimenting with it.
Yes. But my goal, as I've been kind of pondering kind of next level where I want to go, is to really bring it back so that I'm producing consistently every other week. And it is going to be about not necessarily just podcasting, because I think in the world that we live in right now, there's so many ways to communicate. So there's Instagram, you know, there's podcasts, there's videos, there's all of these things. But I feel like sometimes, especially I will say, so like I'm Gen X, and, you know, when I was in school, like we had floppy disks and, you know, Commodore 64s. And I remember when I was doing my internship in college, like I remember seeing email for the first time in the internet. So that's, as in I'm in my last semester of college. So I didn't grow up with all of that. I mean, other than like my Atari and some video games, like not really having that hands-on technology and knowing how to create. And so I think a lot of times for women, because most of my clients are women, like there's usually some kind of technical hurdle. Like, I don't know how to do the buttons and hook the stuff up. And like, I can walk you through that. Like that's the easy part, really. But it's in their head that it's like tech and it's hard. And I don't even like, you know, flipping the remote control on, you know, there are challenges. So I want to kind of dive more into kind of all of our messaging and how we're communicating, because I feel like it's so much bigger than just the podcasting thing. And that's why it was so fun to do that series with Alex, because it was like, how are you communicating, you know, in person when you're in front of a room of people?
Yeah.
And with Amy, we talked a lot about communication just one-to-one. She did this exercise with me. So I'm grabbing this pen. Here, hold this pen. That's my joy and happiness, and you're responsible for that now. Like, that's what we do sometimes when we communicate with people, is we give them that much power over our mind and what we're feeling.
That's deep.
Yeah, it kind of freaked me out when we were...
I had to marinate on that for like a week.
Yeah. But when you think about how we communicate, though, in all these different ways, and like, people are so mean online. Like,
oh yeah.
Like, why?
I was
why
just
would you
listening
do that?
to the Joe Rogan interview, Maynard James Keenan, and they were talking about the issue of that.
Yeah.
Online.
And then how do you, as a creative, who, you know, you're putting your soul out there basically, and then people are mean. And I mean, it's gonna happen, whatever. But it's like,
just easier to be mean online.
I
it's
think
just
it
like
is.
such a short like fix. Like if you're having a shitty day, like, oh,
Yeah.
you suck, blah blah blah. What's wrong with your eyebrows or something?
Right, exactly. Like, it's not even relevant to what you put out there. But
Yeah, that's
you know,
a really
whatever.
interesting new thing. So
yeah, so I think it's evolving into a broader spectrum of just podcasting, because I get questions a lot about video too, and it's like, I haven't really done much. Like, I don't know which are the best microphones to record video with, because I don't do that. Because I like not showing my face all the time. So I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of education and things that can be done because my goal is to help people get their message out and eliminate those barriers. So sometimes it's mindset and what's in our head. Sometimes it's just like, what microphone do I plug in and what button do I press to even just get this thing started?
I see. So, I'm trying to reiterate what you said.
I rambled a lot.
Yeah. Well, usually, I mean, it could be a challenge. Usually, like, the best way to communicate is, like, try to, like, summarize what the person said and say it back to them. Mm-hmm. And I know that if someone's saying something that I don't really understand, then that means it's above me. Like, there's more. Like, I have some learning to do.
Well, I think for me, it's really just, it's evolving. Because the more and I think it's the case with anything, the more you dive into something, the more you realize that you've got so much more to learn.
Okay.
And so my business has really just been evolving as I've gotten more into the podcasting thing and other opportunities have opened up and other questions have presented. It's like, oh, yeah, I should maybe look at that too.
Yeah. So, like, the goal then for you now is to just try to expand your podcast? Or...
It's to grow the business to help more people get their voices out into the world.
You want to address, like, all these issues that you're talking about, like issues of communication.
Yeah. I don't know what that's going to look like. It'll probably involve some online course creation and some in-person workshops because I think that there's a lot to be said for being in the same space. Like, online is awesome, but when you are doing technical work, or like if you're trying to learn an instrument or something, and like I know this specifically from practicing jujitsu and going to class every week, I could watch some guy do the move online, but I'm never going to execute it because there's all these little tweaks that my coach sees where she's like, hey, you need to, grab here or move this way or think about this as you are executing the move. And me sitting at home by myself, I'm never going to get that kind of feedback. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot to be said. I really want to do some in-person workshops to help people work through some of this stuff.
I see. Okay. So hopefully the next step you'll be like...
Yeah.
I think you'd have an audience for that.
I think I might
have some clientele.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah. Well, good luck with it.
Thank you.
I appreciate, I appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks. I'm lucky to be doing it. It's really the best job in the world.
Have you always had that, like, go-getter attitude? Well, I mean,
I never really thought that I would own my own business. I've always been willing to do the hustle to make the money, whether it was to, buy guitars or CDs or whatever that was. Like growing up, I was always cutting grass. I was helping my dad feed the horses. I was doing, whatever I could do, to get that next guitar thing.
What did you imagine yourself doing when you were younger? Did you ever have like an image of yourself when you were older?
I don't know. I knew that music would be a facet of it, but I don't think I really had that crystal clear vision of what it would be. And, like podcasting wasn't a thing, but I never saw myself like on TV or radio or anything either. This just kind of happened.
Yeah, man, you don't know like what shape it's going to take, but
right.
At one point you knew you didn't want to work that cubicle job. You're like, I got to get out of this. You got to do something creative.
Exactly.
So you do this full time though, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I like that. I mean, my criteria is finding full-time artists pursuing any kind of art, like comedy, visual art, music, acting, writing, whatever. In your case, I would maybe call you like a media artist. I don't know. Podcaster, musician. Because you do a lot of different things.
Exactly. And it all kind of feeds each other.
Yeah. But it's either people who want to pursue those things full-time and are trying to, or who are already doing it full-time. Mm-hmm. And drawing inspiration from them and advice for listeners who want to do those things too.
Right.
Maybe are doubting themselves. It's really for me because I need a lot of inspiration. And I doubt myself more so in the past than I do now. Once you get the ball rolling, it's a little anxiety provoking because you got to keep the ball rolling. But
every time,
it's really gratifying. So,
it is.
Do you have any last minute advice? Well, I don't want to say last minute. That seems like you got to do it like real quick. But
Right.
do you have any other advice or inspiration that you could give to listeners?
I guess I have a couple of quotes. I could share those. Do or do not, there is no try. From Yoda.
Nice.
But it's one of the, it's like, it either lights your soul on fire and you're going to do it, or you're maybe going to half-ass it, or you're not going to do it. So just do it or don't do it. Like, don't hem-haw around about it. There is no try. Because, and I catch myself, especially like in emails, if I say, oh, I'll try to blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I will have it done by this date. And then there's a deadline. Like, if it's going to get done, then there's a deadline.
That's good advice.
Because I'll try to do that. It's
I'm
like
trying to get myself away from that too. It's like either, Now say it again.
Do or do not, there is no try.
Do or do not, there is no try.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. And then I would say the other one is from Thelma and Louise.
I haven't seen that movie. I just know that famous clip. Don't they like drive off a cliff or something?
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Okay.
You need to watch it. But there's a line in there where Thelma and Louise are having this conversation, and Thelma's, griping about something. And Louise looks at her and she says, you get what you settle for. And it's true. Like, whether it's how somebody's treating us, whether it's the salary that we're earning, whether it's the type of clients that we're getting, like, we control that. So we get what we are willing to settle for.
And it makes you realize that what you get is in your hands. You have the power to change it.
Exactly.
It's your responsibility.
Yeah.
That brings up personal responsibility.
It truly does. And for me, for instance, if I want a certain type of client that is willing to pay a certain premium for services, then I need to go out and do the work that's going to attract that client. And I need to be really intentional about that.
Do the work that attracts that client. Okay.
But don't settle.
You always do, Push yourself, man.
Yeah.
How good could you really be?
Right.
How much money could you make?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never really tried. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Those two quotes, you kind of revolve those around your head on the day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yoda, actually, the Yoda quote hangs above the entrance to my studio.
Perfect.
And then,
is your studio at home?
Yeah.
Where is it? Like, do you have like an
in our
attic
basement.
or basement? Okay. Do you have like, what's your setup like?
It is, it's a great space with a couple of things that are not so great. So the sump pump is in there. So initially when we finished the basement, it was just my music room. I'd hang out and we'd have band rehearsal in there or whatever, because podcasting was not on the radar. So the sump pump is in there, as well as the closet for like the HVAC unit. So I've got to turn off the air or the heat, depending on the season. If it's April and it's super rainy, or if it's June and the sump pump is kicking on and off, then I've got to kind of be mindful of that as I'm recording. But other than those two things, it's just, I typically record on my Mac laptop. I've used a Zoom H6 for the audio interface.
I see. I remember you suggesting that.
Yeah, I love that thing. Because I can record directly into it on the SD card, or I can use it as the audio interface and then record 3 or 4 microphones into my laptop. And then I use Adobe Audition primarily for editing and production.
I see.
Yeah.
That stuff's still hard for me to imagine. I didn't even know what an interface was.
Yeah.
Until February. I couldn't imagine what it was. It's so bizarre still. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what this is doing right now. But
Yeah, like you're totally
whatever.
learning a new language since you started a podcast.
That's been real fun.
Yeah.
It's good though. I like learning new stuff.
Yeah.
It's been a great experience. Who's been one of your biggest inspirations?
Oh, gosh. I think Lucinda Williams.
Is she a musician?
Yeah,
name sounds
singer-songwriter.
familiar.
She's phenomenal.
Does she sing anything I might know?
So, people have covered her songs. So, like, Tom Petty did a cover of I Changed the Locks. Mary Chapin Carpenter had a hit with Passionate Kisses. And...
Lucinda Williams originally did that?
Yeah,
And
Lucinda
then-
wrote it, and Mary Chapin Carpenter
I've heard
covered
Mary
it.
Chapin Carpenter's
Yeah.
version of it.
Yeah, and she's this great songwriter, and what I love about her is that her voice sounds like she has just been on this 3-day bender of gravel and cigarettes and whiskey, and
She has a raspy, like a
yeah,
raspy voice.
and I think that listening to her because for years I didn't sing. So when I was in college at Indiana State, one of the requirements was that I had to take a choir class to fill the ensemble requirement. So I go to class the first night, and you have to sing for the director so he knows what group to put you in, and I sing, and I finish. He says, "Is that how you really sing, or do you have a cold?" So I lip-synced my way through my choir requirements through college, and then I was just like, well, I am not a singer. But then I had bandmates, particularly my friend Rita, that I've sang with on and off for years. She's like, you have got to start singing because I want to sing harmony. So you've got to sing too. I'm like, okay. And just kind of through that prodding. And then the more I did it, I was like, oh, well, it kind of is fun and I'm not horrible. And but when I got turned on to Lucinda, it was like, her voice is not pristine. Like, you don't hear Barbra Streisand and say, oh, I could totally do that, right?
Yeah, Neil Young isn't like the best singer, but shit, man.
Yeah, but you hear somebody like that, and the emotion just comes right through them. You're like, oh, but I could do that.
Yeah.
And so I think from both a songwriting and a musical standpoint and just the delivery and the singing, she's been a huge inspiration.
Yeah.
Because
It's great.
she sounds so much more interesting
I see.
than a lot of singers.
I see.
Because she doesn't have that pristine clarity.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I may have to look her up more. I'll probably recognize more of her songs.
Yeah.
I feel like I had one of my friends burn me a CD with like one song or two by her because of her voice. She's like, you got to listen to this.
Yeah,
lady
start with
because of
the Car Wheels on a Gravel Road album. That's a
Okay.
good place to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to wrap this up.
Okay.
So where can people find you online?
They can find me at brassybroad.com. I'm also on Instagram at brassybroadjen. That's usually, that is kind of my social media of choice. I am also on LinkedIn for grown-up podcasting, businessy things. So I'm also there, but typically I'm on Instagram.
Tell people what they can find on brassybroad.com and what you offer.
Okay, so I work primarily with industry experts and business owners to help them launch podcasts. I also do some editing, but I've kind of shifted the focus of the business over the past year or two to more of the editing, or not the editing, but the consulting and launch. Because as you know, you're like, hey, I want to do a podcast, but I don't know what I don't know about this. So I really just kind of walk them through step by step. This is the microphone. This is the setup. This is what is going to work for you, and make it as easy for them as possible based on their, technical skill or their comfort level. And we just kind of figure it out together. And then the other big piece of that is accountability. Because you're like, I have clients that have had a microphone sitting on their shelf for 6 months. And then they're like, I'm never going to get this done unless you help me.
I had one for 10 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the right microphone. 10 years later, I can't even use it.
Right.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so I mean that's the fun that I get to have. And then the best part is when they get that email back that they're like, I've been accepted into Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge day, right? When you get that, you're like, this is official. I'm doing this.
That was an interesting experience because it wasn't working for me at first. For some reason, my RSS feed was weird, and so I had to like. It's fun. I like doing that stuff. Like I like trying to figure it out what's wrong as much as I possibly can before I have to ask for external help. But that's a nice feeling when you actually see it on the Apple Podcast.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, and you experience the reward.
Because you're like, I did that. Wow, man. I made that thing, and it's out for the world to hear now.
But just getting there, you gotta do it.
Yeah, so
you just gotta start asking for help and do it badly at first.
Exactly. I told a friend once. I think I wrote a blog post about it. Start a shitty podcast because that's the only way you're gonna get better. It's like I go to jiu-jitsu every week, and I'm horrible at it, but I keep showing up, and eventually. There are little baby steps that I can see. Oh, I didn't get choked as quickly.
Do they teach kids?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get my 3-year-old son into something martial artistic.
Yeah.
Because of his...
I don't know at what age they start, but there's kids' classes.
I think it would help calm him down. He's really hard to... I don't know. He's just harder to parent than my daughter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, So what'd you say? Did they start 3-year-olds?
I don't know. I don't know what age they start, but I do know that there are kids' classes.
Okay. Maybe I'll ask you about the company a little bit later.
Yeah, we'll get that figured out.
I've just been browsing about it. But anyway, anything else about your website that...
No, that's it. Like all the stuff is there and all the ways to connect with me. And you can find the Brassy Broadcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the places. And then my other podcast, Beauty and the Gi, which is about...
What?
That's the jiu-jitsu one that I do with my coach.
Oh, okay.
But it's about so much more than just jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And also, again, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, all the places.
Okay. I know, well, by the time this episode releases, this event I'm about to bring up will have already happened. But you are playing at some festival on August 16th in Times Square.
Oh, yeah. There's a Woodstock celebration concert for 50 years.
And it's just you? Like, are you doing a solo
No. They have, like, a house band for some of the acts, and then there are some, like, singer-songwriters that are going to come in and do more acoustic-type stuff. But, it's all songs that were performed at Woodstock.
Nice.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
You're going to have people dressing up like hippies.
Totally.
Coming out there.
Yeah.
I thought about if I don't work crazy hours that day, I'll have to come and check it out.
Come on out.
And
it's
then,
gonna be fun.
Yeah, it'll be great. Because this is a great excuse for me to actually get out and socialize at events. Because all these people I'm interviewing do things throughout the city.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
Yeah.
I feel good about promoting
outside,
other people.
And it'll be fun.
Also, one other thing. By the time this episode comes out, I think this event I'm about to bring up now won't be over. I don't know how to word that. Anyway, you apparently are talking at some kind of podcast convention.
Oh, She Podcast Live in October.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to moderate a panel with some fellow podcasters, and we are on the they have the conference set up into different tracks. So there's like the beginners track, and there's the growth track, and so our topic is on fear, kind of working through fear and like imposter syndrome and just all of those things that kind of come up as you are producing your podcast, and kind of ways that we've worked through that. So I'm really excited.
Have you ever done anything big like that before? Is it just going to be you talking?
No. So so there's 3 other women podcasters on the panel.
Okay.
And then I'll be kind of moderating the conversation. But I've never had an opportunity at a major podcasting conference like that. So this is going to be the first time for that. And I'm really excited because...
Yeah.
And just for this event as a whole. So it's called She Podcast Live. And it came from, there's a Facebook group called She Podcast, and then it's run by Jessica Kupferman and Elsie Escobar. And then they have a podcast called She Podcast, and it's just this phenomenal group. I think there's like over 13,000 women in this Facebook group now. And it's a great place to ask questions, and nobody's going to be judgy, and just get support. And they did a Kickstarter to see if they could get, if there was enough interest that they would sell enough tickets to even fund this thing. And they killed it with the Kickstarter. And yeah, now it's like this podcasting conference for women that's going to happen in Atlanta in October. And
what are the dates? I'm really interested in going, but like...
It's the weekend of October 9th and 10th.
Okay, so like maybe the second week.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in it, but man, like I mentioned previously, I've exhausted kind of my creative funds this year.
Right.
Because I'm known to do stuff like that, though. Like, sign up for once a year, like some kind of event that will help me grow as an artist.
Well, and there's podcast movement that's going to happen in August down in Orlando, and there are other kind of regional podcasting conferences. But I'm excited for this one specifically to support these women.
Yeah,
because they have done so much for the podcasting community.
I see.
So I was in from as soon as they launched the Kickstarter. I'm like, yes, I'm going. This is going to happen. Like, because it's also an investment in myself, I think, too.
Yeah.
To get kind of that, it's just, I have clients that are going to be there that I've never met face to face. Like, I'm rooming with one of my clients that I've never met. We've talked on the phone, we've Skyped, we've done all of that, but never been in the same physical space, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's adventurous.
Yeah.
You nervous any, you think?
Oh, I will be as that panel gets closer. But I feel like I'm in good hands with these women, too, because we all want to see each other succeed.
Man, it's so tempting. But I did see that. I looked it up online. I saw there are different groups, like it's based on price. Like the beginner group is like $100 something, and then there's a middle group. It's like the VIP group or something that's like $500 something.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see what it's like. Plus, I work in a hotel, and I'm always catering to groups like that. And I'm always thinking, man, it'd be fun to actually attend one of these things. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Me.
Absolutely. Look her up, people. Jen Edds. I am saying your last name.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it right.
Look her up online. Hope this inspires you to start your own podcast or play music or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
do or do not.
All right. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening, and I hope you join me on the next episode of Artist Solace. Bye-bye.